Our next project will be an update on Google Groups presented by Project Manager Greg Stewart and Technical Lead Ed Rines. Take it away.
Thanks, John. My name is Greg Stewart. I'm the Project Manager.
And I'm Ed Rines, the subject matter expert.
And we're here to talk to you about the migration from Simpa to Google Groups. Take it away, Ed.
Right. The existing Simpa server is very, very old. The hardware is 8 years old, and the software is almost going on 12 years old at this point. It's not possible to easily update it because the software is so heavily customized, we can't just replace it with new software, and it's so old it won't run on new hardware. So we're kind of stuck with kind of phasing it out. So we've decided to move to Google Groups because that is part of the Google Apps suite that we currently have, and it's far more stable and far more functional.
And to build upon that a little bit, obviously we employ the entire Google Apps suite here at Case. So everything from Google Mail to Google Calendar and Google Drive. Google Groups is just another kind of piece within that suite. So this is a way for us to kind of combine everything under one umbrella. And then there's some really cool interoperability that comes with that, with taking part in that suite that we'll touch upon a little later. Talking now a little bit about the milestones. So the first milestone is creating a tool to migrate lists from Simpa to Google Groups. The point that I really want to highlight here is that list owners in Simpa will be responsible for migrating their list to Google Groups. We've created the tool and it's out there, but it's dependent upon the list owners to migrate their list. This tool should cover the majority of lists, and any list that, the settings that exist beyond the tool will cover in phase 2, and we'll touch upon that a little later. We've also are working on developing supporting communication and training materials. Obviously, Google Groups is a new tool for a lot of people, especially coming from Simpa. So having that communication and training material easily accessible and clear and easy to read is a huge step in the right direction to make sure that the learning curve really for getting used to this is as small as possible. And finally, the last point, just kind of building upon that, is we want to make the migration process as easy as possible. That's really our goal, and we're doing everything from the communication and training materials to creating the tool itself to make the migration as easy as possible for the list owners.
Currently, Google Groups does not have the ability to build its subscriber lists based on database and LDAP groups and things like that Simpa did have. So we are working on creating some tools to allow that. There are also a few other things that are a bit problematic with Google Groups, like creating large lists with large numbers of external users. So we're working on some tools to help with that as well. And finally, once all the bases are covered and we've got everybody moved over, we will begin the decommissioning of the old Simpa server.
Perfect. Thanks, Ed. Yeah. Talking now about the current project status. So we have reviewed all the communication and training materials. Those are all found at, jumping ahead, there's a site at case.edu/its/google/groups that houses all of those communication training materials, as well as the migration tool, which we've launched to the campus. Our goal of everything is still just to make this as easy as possible for everyone. The site also includes a short training video on how to use the tool. I think that's a great place to start. There's also a plethora of documentation on how to use groups, as well as a pre- and post-migration checklist, so you know what to look out for before you migrate your list, as well as what to look out for afterwards, or if there's any differences that you should know. And finally, we're still doing an ongoing communication to the campus, including this broadcast today. So we're going to continue to communicate out to end users about any upcoming dates, and just a constant reminder of this process taking place as we move through migrating the lists. Talking a little bit more about that, so our current migration status is we are sitting right around just under 1,000 lists migrated. So that's quite a few lists that have successfully migrated using the tool, and we continue to watch that number grow and grow as we communicate out and hopefully get all of the active lists in Simpa migrated over to Google Groups. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about the timeline and what to expect with this project. So phase one is what we've worked on and we have deployed out there. So that's really developing and deploying the migration tool. The project is is split into two phases. As you can see, there's the first phase of kind of building the tool. The second phase, Ed will talk a little bit more about now.
Yeah, phase two is where we start dealing with some of those special cases like the LDAP and database-backed lists and the external users. So that's the part we are just starting. The deployed migration tool is working well now. We've uncovered a few problems with it that have all been cleaned up, and things seem to be progressing quite well with that.
Yep. And once we've made it through both of those phases, we will close the project as well as decommission the Simpa server. That's all we have for today, so thank you. Any questions, John?
Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Ed. One question that we had is that are there any features of Google Groups that aren't present in the Simpa mailing list manager?
That's a great question, John. So there's a lot of cool features in groups that don't exist in Simpa today. One of those is, like I talked about, the interoperability between Calendar and Drive. So if you find yourself commonly adding the same group of people to a Google Doc or adding them to a calendar invite, instead you can make a Google group and just invite that group to edit the document or to your calendar invite. And from there you can make, if you need to make any person-by-person changes, you can do that. But it's really cool to just now have a one kind of stop place that you can add all those common, your team that you're working with, your managers, or all your personnel beneath you. The other thing that I want to talk about is the archiving feature. So in groups, you no longer have to worry about archiving limits that exist in Simpa. It also puts it in really nice kind of forum type layout. So it works actually really nicely. And I think those are two great features that come from using Google Groups.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Ed.